Stay cool, bird boy.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memories. We grab a copy off that shelf, we pop it in a VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Let's kick some ice.
And together, ice pun. And together we're here to help you navigate all those landmines littered down memory lane. So Mike, we're a fledgling new podcast. We're just essentially babies. You know, I think we're coming up on our second birthday. About 66 shows or something in now. So
Nice.
so we're still kind of sowing our oats, feeling our way, right? Some things have developed. We're at least developing some patterns. I think the pattern is most predominant is that we kick off our seasons with some choice movies. Con Air and Congo come to mind. So we thought, keeping with that theme, it might be fun to start season 4 with one of the more decorated turds in the punch bowl. We're going to talk about Batman and Robin from 1997 this week, Mike.
Hooray! Yeah, this one. I knew going in this was going to be tough.
Yeah.
Unlike, Con Air, I still had hopes for. Congo, I knew was a turd, but this one I knew going in. This was like Waterworld or Battlefield Earth level of like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah, this one has been in our Jart's court of hell for a long time. We thought we would just probably avoid it, but we decided to call an audible and go with the big guns. This is start season 4 off with the bang. So this is the pace car, Mike. This is the set and the pace for the rest of the season.
we're not putting the hammer down yet.
We're not putting the hammer down yet, Cole. So hang on. All right. So let's just kind of just jump into this. So everybody and their podcasting brother has covered this movie and talked about the same thing, how bad it is. Duh. We get it. It's a bad movie. We're not going to make any revelations here. So what will set us apart here, Mike? Why should we even be talking about this? So we're grumpy, we're nostalgic, but we're also helpful. And I think that we could probably look at this from a fresh perspective, try to pull a few good things out of it, and maybe try to understand, what they were trying to do and maybe how we could improve them, right? So maybe if you're, listening to your 50th Batman and Robin podcast take, hopefully this will be a little different. Otherwise, you should probably just close the program and go back to work.
Hey, at least, spoiler alert, they don't have penguins with rockets strapped to their backs.
That's yeah. And there's a few things more that we'll pull out.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of jump into it. So this was directed by Joel Schumacher, who we lost sadly in 2020. He directed 38 movies over his illustrious career, Mike. Some of my favorites include DC Cab, St. Elmo's Fire, The Lost Boys, one of your favorites, Mike, Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
He does a lot of other things too that but these are the fun ones that we want to talk about. It was written by a guy named Akiva Goldsman, who's a pretty prolific screenwriter. Several movies to his credit, including most of the John Grisham novels that got adapted to movies. He's done most of those. He did all the Da Vinci Code movies. He did the screenplay for I Am Legend. He's done some good ones here. He did A Beautiful Mind and some other things. So he's not a hack. I don't know. Maybe he was just. Maybe
I don't know. He's
vitamin B deficiency during this.
Yeah. If you ask some Star Trek people right now, they would probably call him a hack. So
yeah,
I'll just throw that out there for now.
Yeah, true that. This was released on June 20th of 1997. A big year for movies, and it had a budget of $125 million. Mike.
Holy crap.
That's a lot of money that could have went to something better. But, so let's pace ourselves. We start ragging on this thing now. We're gonna
let's keep it rag free for a little while.
Rag free. I'll get through the credits maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So this stink burger is served with an inordinate amount of cheese, Mike, and most of that cheese is brought to you by the cast. So why don't you start us off by going through the illustrious cast here?
Sure. Top billing, which was interesting, was Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie, but I guess that was similar to Jack Nicholson having top billing in the first Tim Burton one.
Yeah, what to say about a franchise that its hero can't get top billing?
I know, right? And it's called Batman, but the villain gets top billing. It's like, okay. Yeah. But Schwarzenegger plays Dr. Fries, I like to call him Dr. Freeze, and two-time decathlete.
It's a rare mix, a molecular biologist and and two-time decathlete.
Did they say he was a Nobel Prize winner too, or was it just he was just noted physicist or scientist like Joseph Jaworski or something.
I was forcibly trying to not pay too much attention during this one.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
my apologies.
yeah, he's our villain. Which the cool thing about it was they picked a guy with a German accent, which kind of harkened back to the TV show, which had famed director Otto Preminger.
Yeah,
do the Mr. Freeze role for a couple episodes in the Adam West series. I thought it was kind of.
I'm going to tip my hand a little bit. I like Schwarzenegger in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, we'll get to that later. Sorry, we got a long way.
We have a long discussion about an actor and what they're given. That could be a whole podcast, but that goes very well with this movie.
Fair enough.
Then we have Batman, played by George Clooney, in his first bow in the wearing the cape. He's fine. For me, he's lacking some of the charisma and darkness of Batman. He almost seems too nice, if that can be used as a word. He doesn't. You don't see him and say that guy's got something going on.
There's nothing behind there. There's no dark secrets. There's no dark brooding.
There's nothing between the ears there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You have his ward played. Chris O'Donnell, who plays Dick. Or Robin, one of the two birds. I'm trying to keep my composure, Justin.
Deep breath.
I kept getting bothered by Mr. Freeze calling Batman and Robin the two birds. Just that annoyed me, especially from a scientist who's so noted and smart.
Yeah. Well,
but anyway, Chris O'Donnell. It was. I found him very whiny, kind of like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. It was just kind of that. Annoying kid role, which that's what he's supposed to be. He's Robin. He's supposed to be, learning
teen angst. Yeah,
he's teen angst. Yeah, and some of his angsty expressions he uses, especially directed at Barbara, played by Alicia Silverstone, who, by the way, is a terrible actress. Although, again, I'm going to go back to the lines they're given. Maybe that made her so wooden.
Yeah,
she was much better in a movie like Clueless. But
does Meryl Streep pull off this role, Mike? No.
No. Well, that gets me to the villains. The villains are actually interesting. You said Arnold Schwarzenegger is pretty decent, which I agree with. Yeah. Uma Thurman, I think she came out of this movie looking the less sullied of the most of them, because I just felt like she actually got into the that Mae West-y kind of like.
She committed to the bit, I think.
Yeah, come up and see me sometime, boys. That kind of just she was in it, and she had more of a like I said, she came off looking the best in this movie for me. But she plays Poison Ivy, which
Composure, please.
I know. And now we have two regulars from the Batman series. Poor old Pat Hingle, who plays Commissioner Gordon again for the fourth time. Unfortunately, this is the meatiest role he had in any of the movies. I think he had the most lines in this one, and most of them were spent, mooning over Poison Ivy, and
drugged.
Just not a very
not a good look. Not a good look. Yeah.
And then you had Alfred Butterworth or Pennyworth, played by Michael Gow. Quick aside here, people that say the English language is really hard to learn, take the suffix OUGH and think of how many different pronunciations of words you can get from that. I thought about that when I saw this guy's name. I was like, Michael Goff, Goo. I was like, whatever. That's on the side. Thank you. But he has to play his role. Has this weird plot in the movie where he's dying, which this seemed very oddly placed, but we'll get into that. Okay. Another thankless role for Elle Macpherson, who we remember from being in The Edge, is just the trophy wife in that movie.
Yeah.
And here she's a trophy girlfriend, and just not even needed in the role for anything.
Completely redundant, yeah.
Yeah, I just no chemistry between her and George Clooney, and just like, why? You had Coolio in here briefly. Rest in peace, Coolio.
Yep.
Jesse the Body Ventura appears.
I saw that. Yeah,
having about the same amount of screen time as he did in Demolition Man. Just he was in there for some reason. Okay, and Vivica A. Fox, who a brief role,
very important scene, brought a lot.
Very important scene playing Miss Behaven, which I thought was a very clever little name there, but again, not used enough for my liking.
Well, puns are the highest comedy. Mike. So
That must. Well, yes.
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that later.
It's the most well-respected, revered type of comedy. Everybody appreciates a good pun. So that's quite a cast, Mike. Thank you. A couple
It is cast.
other cast members that I noticed that maybe you glossed over, maybe you didn't want to talk about. Senator Pat Leahy is in this movie.
Briefly, yeah.
Briefly, that's an odd cameo. It says Corey Haim. He's in the cast.
I didn't see him.
Uncredited. He's supposed to be one of the ice goons at some point.
Oh, the ice thug.
He's one of the ice thugs.
On the copsicles.
Yeah.
I hope he caught that.
Some other notes about that cast. Arnold was paid a whopping $25 million for his scant 6 weeks worth of work here. Val Kilmer dropped out of this movie because he wanted to do Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando.
Smart.
So I think he was doomed whatever path he chose to take there.
Oh, wow.
Just about every leading man in Hollywood was considered for the role, but especially David Duchovny, he was the closest. But George Clooney came and swooped in at the end, mostly because of his jawline, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he looked the part, but just David Duchovny, maybe I could see, being kind of dark.
Sure. Uma Thurman's role of Poison Ivy they also considered actors of Julia Roberts, Sharon Stone, and Julianne Moore. But she got the role. I can see either one of those filling in pretty well. George Clooney famously hates this movie. Just about everybody who was in this movie hates this movie, but he's gone so far as to carry spare cash around with him to offer refunds to people that come up to him and say, I did not enjoy it. So the last 25 years, he's been handing out free refunds to anybody that complains about the movie to him, and he's vowed to never let his children see it. So he's very proud of that one.
That's very smart.
There are 27 ice puns in the script uttered by Arnold here, so we'll get to some of that high comedy here as well.
The Iceman cometh.
Tim Burton, who was the director of the first two and produced the third one, he had no involvement with this one whatsoever. Maybe he could read the writing on the wall. Mm-hmm. And Batman creator Bob Kane died a year after this came out.
Oh no!
I'm not saying those two were tied together, but draw your own conclusion.
Total coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So, not a good movie, but let's kind of go through it. So, this is really a victim of the time. So, let's talk a little bit about 1997. So, when we first started the podcast, those years, 95, 96, 97, we always thought, there's so much meat here. We could talk about these 3 years for the first 5 seasons. So, let's go back in the time machine here a little bit, Mike. So, on June 6th of this year, a couple weeks prior, we had Con Air released in theaters. Movie, which we covered at the premiere of season 3. We encourage our new listeners to go back and listen to that one. That's a great one. 2 weeks later, we had this movie that came out with my best friend's wedding, and Leprechaun 3 came out this week. So I want to go. The rich get richer, Mike. And then the next week, of course, you had Face Off. So we didn't get enough. We had 2 movies for Nicolas Cage in June of 97.
Wow.
A couple of weeks later, it's kind of indicative of how the trajectory of this box office for this movie went. The movie Contact came out, and if you purchased a ticket to see Contact, you got a free ticket to see Batman and Robin, because the word got out by then, and the studio conceded this movie was not going to have any legs. So there was several promotions throughout the summer to tack on a free viewing of Batman and Robin if you bought another Warner Brothers ticket. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Did it have like a bad opening weekend, or did it just have so much competition that it just kind of
made a ton of money? That's kind of the hubris that we're going to talk about here as well.
Wow.
The irony of the film world, at least. I had a ticket to see Contact, and I had the free ticket in my hand, and me and my wife said, "Nah, we don't want to go see it. we would rather go home."
Oh yeah.
So
I think my wife and I saw, but we saw both of them. We saw Batman and Robin in Contact.
Yeah. It ended up doing pretty well at the box office. We'll get that here at the end. It was number 9 that year in the box office chart for 97, behind Titanic, which was first, Men in Black, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, one of your favorites.
I figured there was a Jurassic Park in there.
Liar Liar coming in at 4, which we don't really talk about, but that was a really big movie.
Yeah, it was.
And Air Force One, which is doomed to be covered by this podcast. That was number 5. So
get off my plane.
Yeah, good crop of movies that year. I thought we'd talk about some other things about 1997 because we've run out a lot of the pop culture stuff. So some of the things we're enjoying as food, Mike, some of our favorite snacks that are no longer with us, some of them are no longer with us. Kudos, the chocolatey granola bar. Kudos that everybody loved. Those are the most popular food then.
And I saw for sale at a store recently was a Reggie bar.
Wow.
And I can't believe somebody was still making Reggie Jackson chocolate.
Those are great.
Bars.
The little Pocky Puck thing with chocolate and Rice Krispies and caramel. That was great.
I was amazed they still had that, but kudos. I kind of remember it, but it's
They were billed as like a healthy granola thing, but they were just covered in chocolate. Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Jello pudding bites were big that year. Uncrustables premiered this year for those of us that
Yeah.
want to eat that.
I still eat those.
Yeah, Lunchables were big in the 1997,
Yes.
starting the charcuterie fad way back when. We had Dunkaroos, Mike. Remember Dunkaroos? It was a
Yes.
cookie with something you could dunk in there. It's sugar that you could dip sugar in. Dippin' Dots premiered this year, so people at the mall could sell ice cream uh, without getting botulism. Then Red Bull was premiered this year. We started drinking Red Bull, so there you go.
We
Yeah, some other things on the pop culture scene, Mike. The Packers won the Super Bowl
Yay,
that year.
Packers.
Packers won the Super Bowl. Fen was pulled off the market. Fen is not the middle management elf at the North Pole. This was the weight loss drug that
Ralphie.
made people sick. Unfortunately, this is the summer that Princess Di was killed in an accident with Dodi Fayed. We all remember where we were when that happened. This is the debut of the Nintendo 64 gaming console, a console that I still have hooked up in my house.
Yeah, we have
Still
one
play with
too.
regularity. First Harry Potter book was published a couple of weeks prior to this film, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The first DVD came out. You want to guess what the first DVD released to the American market was?
Oh, if hopefully not Batman and Robin.
No, it was Twister.
Oh, good one.
And I went right out and bought it.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. We were listening to the Spice Girls, Mike. Everybody was into the Spice Girls.
Yes, collectively. The royal we.
I did that research today at work, and I was driving home. I played some Spice Girls on my Spotify driving home, and you know what? It's not that bad, to be honest.
Yeah. To Become One is not a bad song.
Yeah, it's good stuff there. This is the year that we learned how to make ourselves sick with WebMD. That's website premiere. And this is also the year that we learned what makes us sick by Facebook. Facebook came out that year, Mike.
Wow.
So, there you go. Seems like 100 years ago, but not really that long.
A website that rated college girls to what it is today.
What it is today. It's really, really progressed.
It's really come far.
Yeah, wretched hive of scum and villainy, Mike. On the music scene, we were wondering where all the cowboys had gone, but Paula Cole told us all about that. I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly.
No, or we'll get to him later.
Insert joke here. You had Hypnotized by Notorious B.I.G. And we were mostly listening to the album Jock Jams by ESPN, Mike. It was all the stadium anthems.
All the anthems, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what we were listening to on our radios when we were driving to the theater to go see this great movie. Mike, it's 1997. We're, fresh out of college, right? Just
a few years.
Out into the world, just trying to figure out where to make our means, and taking our young brides out to the movies, and we're going to take them to go see Batman and Robin, the fourth installment of the thrilling Batman series.
It's got to be good.
It had to be good, right?
Yeah.
And it's $150 million. Ultra secret. Most of Arnold's 6-week shoot was like he was draped in tents, so nobody could see his costume. They didn't want that to be leaked to the press.
You mean the costume that gave him breast?
Yeah, that one there. Yeah, I'm excited to see this movie, aren't you, Mike? Ready to go?
Yeah, well, you're just. I like the way you framed it. It's like you'd already finished seeing 3 Batman movies, and they're relatively good. They'd probably gone down in quality a little, just a little bit.
Just a little tick. Yeah. Even
Batman Forever, what was campy as it kind of was getting, wasn't bad. But
yeah,
you said to yourself, this has got to be pretty good. But it's got Arnold as a villain.
You got Arnold here.
Yeah.
Arnold coming in the 4th installment of a movie. I mean, what's not to be impressed about, right?
Exactly. I'm ready.
So hit the bat button, Mike.
This is the Bane button, the little.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in a minute.
All right.
So right away we get these images of the bat crotch, the bat buns,
the suiting up scene, man.
The bat nipples. Yeah.
Yep.
And we can't even make it like 150 seconds without the first quip about,
Yeah.
They're Batman and Robin are looking at the Batmobile. And Robin wants his own car, and Batman says, "This is why Superman works alone."
I know. It's the scene was set right there. And then
when he said chicks dig the car, I like, you know what? This was a terrible idea.
Yep. and poor Alfred has indigestion or something going on.
We could have watched The Godfather. But there you go. So I mean that's how it starts. And what I like here is that Robin doesn't get to ride in the car. He has to drive around his little scooter,
Yeah.
like the chimpanzee in Planet of the Apes at the end. He gets his own ride. uh, but what I do appreciate, and this is in serious, they start right up. There's no backstory.
There's no exposition.
They just
You're supposed
get
to know
into
what. I don't. Was Robin even introduced in Batman Forever? Is
he
he
was.
like?
I thought he was
Okay.
introduced here, but apparently that happened in 3. I missed all
Yeah, I
that.
remember they actually showed the circus act, I think, and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Commissioner Gordon comes on the screen and says, "Hey, this guy Dr. Freeze is at the museum. You better go check it out." The next thing you know, we're in this giant set piece. And yeah, I mean, for all its faults, Mike, they spent a lot of money on art and decoration and set design. And I mean, it looks pretty. I mean,
Yeah, it looks like Tim Burton's world. I mean,
yeah, they
except
are
for
consistent there.
this museum's a little bit different than the art museum from the first movie, but
Yeah.
that Jack Nicholson all painted up and under Prince's
Yeah.
little song there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is where we get introduced to this first set piece, and we see Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Freeze.
Ah,
It is a ridiculous costume that's powered by diamonds to keep him cool. That's why he's there. He's
course.
stealing diamonds from the museum. And he's got his hockey thugs, and he's frozen the place over. But they're no match for the Bat Crew because they've got built-in ice skates in their boots, of course.
Of course.
I like that they click their heels and the ice skates come out. That's just great. But there's this long, drawn-out, clumsily stuntman scene.
Yeah. It's another one of those, you know what you're getting into when you start hearing the coconut sound effects from when they get bonked on the head. I mean, you're like, uh-oh. I mean, that was like my second or third, maybe fourth red flag. It was coming. I was like, we're gonna leave theater, leave now.
And it's like none of the punches really connect. Like especially if you watch the most recent The Batman with
Pattinson,
yeah. There's scenes in there where he beats the crap out of these villains, and you literally have to turn away with the force of the punches and the way the brutality of him here. And to see that kind of matched up against this, it's where we've gone. He freezes the big dinosaur thing, and he makes his escape and steals his giant diamond to power his suit. Curses, right, Mike? So, yeah.
Whew, I'm reliving it.
So you're exhausted already.
I'm tired, man.
So
he hadn't got to the cowabunga part, and I'm already tired.
Oh boy! So Freeze escapes, and then Batman and Robin have to go back to the Batcave. And this is where we get introduced to the second plot line, the second villain here, and that's Uma Thurman playing little Pamela, who's a botanist, I think.
Yeah.
She's working in a laboratory to develop these special strain of plants, and she's working for this mad scientist named Jason. And he's lost his way, and he's started to weaponize these plants and selling this.
You ever watch Robot Chicken and has that mad scientist at the start of it? He was an exact copy of that character.
Yeah, he's like Clayton Forrester all over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he demonstrates to all these guys bidding on this new formula.
Fidel Castro and Yasser Arafat.
Yeah, of course, right. But he brings in the poor little criminal Antonio Diego, I think his name was, and he injects him with this venom from these plants, and Antonio turns into Bane, the villain Bane. Later to be played by Tom Hardy doing his best Sean Connery accent. See how all of our stuff just ties back together.
It does.
It's fantastic.
It really does.
Yeah, that Bane is this Bane. She gets wind of what Jason is doing and selling this. She doesn't like that, and he kills her. He tries to kill her. He pushes her down. And
I love the setting of a Frankenstein's lab out in the jungle. It's pretty really
So he pushes down. Abby Normal's brain falls on her. And again, these origin stories are pretty light on the depth and detail here. She just she gets covered in these flowers and these poisoned chemicals, and you think she's dead, Mike. But she's not. Yeah.
She becomes Catwoman.
Yeah, she becomes Catwoman again, and for some reason, Bane just decides to stick around and join and stay with her. But there you go. So now you got two villains running loose. So, she goes to a gala, confronts Bruce Wayne about how many galas does Gotham have to have? My God,
this had to be the wackiest gala that Gotham's ever had, though, with the dancing and the people dressed up like they were Aboriginal, tribesmen.
Yeah,
this was an interesting gala even for Gotham.
We're not going to bog our grumpy nation into the details of this plot too much, but they have a gala that introduces some sort of like weather satellite system that Wayne is doing, and that conflicts with
Mm.
Poison Ivy's plans for a plant ruled world, and it just goes from there. You get
Yeah.
several dumb chase scenes, or they're driving through Gotham, driving on statues, and it's just this collection of like mindless, not knowing what direction things are going, why they're even happening scenes through the bulk of this movie.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah,
Poison Ivy's lair is
yeah.
occupied by insane clown posse juggalos for some reason.
Yeah, I could figure out what that was.
I have no idea.
Batman and Robin go back and they do some more exposition on Freeze, and they are watching this closed circuit thing of him. He's trying to save his wife, and he falls in a vat of stuff, and somehow he survives, Mike. And I wrote that down because they literally said somehow he survived.
Somehow,
Like just like Palpatine,
actually,
That's where those guys got it from.
He's returned. No,
So if the screenwriters from Rise of Skywalker read this, that it starts to make a whole lot of sense now.
a little bit.
We don't have to explain anything. We'll just say somehow, and they'll come. They'll pay $8 to see somehow. But majority of the movie is just cat and mouse stuff between the villains, Batman trying to find them. There's a lot of teenage angst between Robin and Batman. There's some trust issues, and then of course we get Alicia Silverstone shows up as Alfred's niece.
Niece, yeah, which I guess I'm
Yeah.
used to her being, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon, but in this
Right.
one, she's the niece of Alfred. But she's still Barbara, but she's rides her motorcycles secretly.
Yeah. So she comes in and kind of side mouths all her dialogue for the next 20 minutes. And she's a good girl, but she's got a wild side.
She went to Oxbridge, not Oxford, not Cambridge, but
Oxbridge, yeah.
Oxbridge.
And she conveniently, she hacks herself into the Batcave stuff and downloads all the superhero stuff, and she wants to join the team. And of course, they just let her. And
What was now? And I'm not totally up to date on my Batman lore, but I know Batman's mother's famously named Martha in the Batman versus Superman movies, recent ones. But in this one, was it Margaret? Is that what they were trying?
I think that's what they were saying. Yeah.
Password she was trying to use on the computer. Okay.
Yeah, it was Alfred's wife, Peg, or Margaret. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
Alfred's wife. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was looking for another Martha. Maybe I was like,
Yeah.
the DC universe seems to be covered with them.
So there's a scene here where Coolio is running these street racers. They kind of remake the scene in The Warriors where all the gangs from New York kind of show up together, and they're having these like races, and Coolio is the MC.
He's the banker.
Yeah, and then she shows up there and kind of shows some of her hidden talents. She can drive a motorcycle really fast, so she's got to be a superhero now, right?
Do you like her suiting up scene where they did all the up close?
Oh yeah,
her butt and her.
You know what other scenes I couldn't get enough of? Whenever he threw a hook or a grappling hook, they always had to show where it landed and wrapping around whatever it wrapped around. Mike,
yeah,
there were 50 of those scenes where he threw something in it. Yeah.
Do you like how Batman's or George Clooney's Bruce Wayne's, I guess, flashbacks were all at Dutch angles?
Oh yeah.
Nice touch.
Nice homage there. Yeah. There's one scene here that I don't know if you caught it, Mike, but Arnold. He's struggling with Batman. He's trying to get back to see his wife, and by now he's teamed up with Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy wants to join up with him so he can freeze the world so she can grow plants in it. Because plants grow on ice so well. Can someone explain to me what was even happening here?
I gave up on plot.
Okay, good. All right, you too. But there's a scene here. He says where you and Meatloaf retrieved my wife, referring to Bane. He calls Bane Meatloaf. I mean, at that point, I'm like, okay, that's not bad.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But there's like a half dozen repetitive scenes that you face palm and say, oh, here we go again. More in-depth security guards, more quips.
Oh yeah.
Oh, she's being sultry again, and Robin's angry, and he's whining about trust. And she introduces like Seymour's Little Shop of Horrors plant. That's going to be the new species that takes over. Yeah. So.
Do you need to go on?
I kind of froze there. See what I did there? But the final act is that they're going to co-opt the satellite system, and Freeze is going to freeze the world. And they're clever, typical Batman clever countermeasure. That is, he just reverses it and uses their satellites to reflect the sun from the Congo, Mike. Of all places.
Yes, the sunrise over there. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so he melts Gotham. Uma Thurman gets devoured by one of her little shop of horror plants, and you think she's dead, and she just
Mm.
ends up in Arkham jail. I don't know where that connected. Uh, they appeal to his humanity, and he thought all this time, Freeze did, that Batman killed his wife, who was in suspended animation, to find the cure for McGregor's disease.
Oh, I think
McGregor,
McGregor syndrome is
Troy
tough,
McGregor.
dude.
Yeah,
I would
the
hate to
pro-
catch that if it
the
existed.
producer's name was McGregor, so that was the inside joke
Yeah.
there. But he's got the same disease that she
Oh
had, the same
no.
disease that Alfred had.
Oh, it's very
And
rare too.
so
That's
they
amazing.
convinced Freeze to use his research to save Alfred, and then
Oh,
then they keep him from dying, and they put him in Arkham Asylum. And the next thing you know, Arkham Asylum, he meets up with Uma Thurman. It's implied that he's going to kill her for killing his wife.
yes. Oh.
I, I I don't know.
Okay.
So that's it. That's and then there's
This is yeah. Go ahead. Hey, wait. You can't forget the ending credits. You
oh
actually
yeah,
have a really good Smashing Pumpkins song that's cut short so we can hear R. Kelly
R. Kelly. Yeah,
warble some song about Gotham City,
yeah.
which you talk about two songs that totally clash together in the closing. It was the perfect denouement to such a bad movie was having that credits. So I
Yeah,
love it.
it was horrendous. So let's face it.
Well, but we haven't come to bury this movie. We've come to
No,
praise it or help it.
all right. So by the end of the movie, Mike, you're listening, as you're listening to R. Kelly filing out, you're wondering like, okay, well, I don't have to see Batman anymore.
It's so ironic to hear R. Kelly singing a song about truth and justice in Gotham City and just
Yeah,
you
some
know
things just don't age well, do
no.
they? All right, so this movie, despite all of its numerous flaws, did actually pretty well at the box office. It had a $42 million opening. It ended up doing 107 million from a domestic release, and that's kind
Wow.
of indicative of it not having legs. People did not go back to see this, nor did they tell other people to go see it. So that's kind of indicative of that gap. It had $238 million worldwide, but even with that kind of box office cachet, the critical reception was enough to really just have some dire consequences there. So it was the first Batman with to get no Oscar nominations. It killed some careers. Alicia Silverstone had some difficult time getting work after this, as did Chris O'Donnell. It was so bad it actually killed. It killed the franchise. We'll get to that in a little bit. It actually killed two franchises because Warner Brothers had in development Superman Lives, the Superman
Uh,
project with Tim Burton, which is why he wasn't involved in this, with Nicolas Cage. And they thought, this killed superhero movies to the point where they're like, you know what? They pulled the funding partly as a result of the box office reception for this
wow.
movie. So that's bad. Not only do you kill your own franchise, you kill other franchises that are like you. We'll get to that here in a little bit. It's the number one worst movie by Empire Magazine. That's quite a list.
Wow.
It got number 5 ranking for Entertainment Weekly's worst sequels list. It got 11 Razzies nominations. The winner there was Alicia Silverstone. She was the only one that managed to win
Yeah.
out of that.
She
Uh,
she just, she did a good job to earn
yeah,
that.
it could have done much worse, but Mike, you remember this is the year that you had The Postman and Con Air and
Yeah, you can't.
Anaconda and the Dennis Rodman Van Damme movie Double Team
Oh wow.
came in and got won a
Yes.
lot of Razzies that year too. So if it were not for those other juggernauts, this movie might have fared much worse.
I'm sure John Voight collected some hardware that year
Yeah,
for
yeah.
his lovely roles Anaconda.
His little cheeky, yeah, great. 97, man. I'd still take it over this year, but whatever.
Oh,
So let's talk about the grumpy meter here, Mike. Let's kind of go back and look at our own personal take on this from the first time we saw it as young men, and to our most recent time as cynical, crusty adults, and what's changed. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and go first and talk about your analysis?
sure. I actually saw this in the theater in '97 with my wife Lydia, and we were watching it last night, and we couldn't remember what we thought of it when we saw it. It was that it like as you were saying, it came between so many other movies that summer. This movie just kind of got lost in the shuffle. It was just one of those like, oh, I didn't have a really bad impression of it at the time, but not a good one. If there's no lasting memory from it, but it must not have been too good. But after all the publicity stuff, I hate watched this a few months ago with my daughter, and it was as bad as I remember. And
Yeah,
this was after we watched, I think the second Batman movie from Michael Keaton, and
right.
That
Quite
movie
a
is
departure. Yeah.
it is. It's amazing. Like we were just before we went to the exposition of this movie, we talked about how it seemed like just kind of a gradual decline in movies, but this was like
Exponential.
this was going into a canyon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, there was the gaping flaw for this movie was they tried to do the Tim Burton aesthetic, but combine it with the '60s TV show.
Yeah.
Even with the villains not dying at the end. Like we had just finished watching other movies where the Joker dies, the Penguin dies, Two-Face, and I don't know if the Riddler dies or not, but anyway, you get my point. It's like there's actual there's stakes and there's drama and there's foreboding and darkness. And in this movie, like I said, it has that. It has the setting of that, but then it has these clowny villains. Like I said, the colorful Juggalo guys and the stupid ice goons. I mean, everything is even the company. It had everything but the bam and the poof and the zowie, coming across the screen like the Batman movie, the show. And like I said, they were trying to get the quips and stuff, and it captures that in a way, but you can't put those two together. It was trying too hard to do the Tim Burton thing, and it just, trying to carry in that '60s TV show. You can't mix those two genres together to me. And
if you're like 80% dialogue, 20% quip, that's a decent ratio. But if you inverse those, then none of them work,
Yeah, yeah. And it made me appreciate Joss Whedon a little bit more. You think about some of the dialogue he puts in the Marvel movies and some of his other work. And it's corny, but it works in the Marvel series most of the time. And in this, it's like they try to do the snappy quips and the puns. It's just it's eye rolling, groaning kind of. You're like, oh, another ice pun.
And none of it's particularly clever. I mean, if they threw in a few there that would hit, I was like, okay,
yeah, and
I'll accept 1 out of 5, but 1 out of 25, I'm not gonna. Yeah.
In small doses too. It doesn't work in a 2-hour, 5-minute movie, but it works in a 22-minute sitcom. It doesn't.
Right.
You can't do that with this background. And George Clooney, like I said, good actor, but he's kind of like the Timothy Dalton of the James Bond movies.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there, and the charisma's missing. Like I said, some of the Batman mystique is not there with his character. And Joel Schumacher, I know he was embarrassed of this movie, but come on, man, a director knows what they're creating as they're creating it, and that's why I kind of get back to these actors too. They know what they're doing when they're reading some of these lines, and I know there's contracts involved, but come on, they had to know that what they were creating was a pile of poo at the time they were doing it. So,
like if they would have owned it, said, it was a terrible movie, but it was fun. I would have accepted that. And nothing changed from the script.
No, but I think that's what was missing was they were trying to be fun, but they were in the wrong city to be having fun. Gotham City is not a
fun place.
Not a fun place, especially in what they created.
Right.
So I think we got to try to think of some qualities, remarks about this movie, but it's tough. It really is.
It's hard to find anything of any kind of redeeming value, but maybe we can try. So
it's better than other stuff we've seen lately. I give apologies to Kevin Costner. Waterworld wasn't as bad as I thought after seeing this. Even the Postman. If I saw the Postman right now, I might actually enjoy it.
Yeah, well, let's not get carried away by it.
I know.
I think that's just the PTSD talking.
I think so. It's a prisoner of the moment thing. I'm sorry.
Why don't you take a little break here, and I'll take the wheel for a minute. So, my first view was, again, I had a free ticket in my hand to see it in the theater when I saw Contact, and I passed over it. And I was a Batman fan. We talked about this before. I think I waited until the DVD release actually to rent it. And it had the great marketing, it had the great logo, it had the great colors. It's like you look at that box, you think, I want to watch this, and then you throw it in there, and like, I don't think I got through it. I don't watch this. I think I could hit stop, and I did. Like in the theater, I would have been stuck there. But yeah, I couldn't take it. And again, I just started to glean some of the personality traits I have now as a cynical, grumpy moviegoer, and I had enough of it by that point. It wasn't what I wanted. It just felt, this is a children's movie. And it was sold and marketed as this is Jim Henson's Bat Babies, Mike. This is
with,
not
with nipples on the suits.
with nipples on the suit. This movie is great for like a 5 or 6 year old
Yeah.
because there's common things that they can get. They would probably enjoy it. It's shiny, it's flashy. It doesn't take a lot of thinking to figure out what's going on. But coming off those previous three, well, the first two at least, Batman was reinvented. Comic books were reinvented as these dark and brooding things, and they just completely,
Yeah.
just lost their way. This was a film made with hubris. This was a movie written to sell merchandise. We talked about this before. It's not that we're above that. It's just that's all it was. I don't think it was art in any way, shape, or form. So I may have gave it half a star my first time. When I watched it through the second time, I couldn't find enough. I gave it a 0.25, a quarter star out of 5, and that's only for the meatloaf line that Arnold delivered.
Yeah.
So if it didn't have that, it might have been in big trouble.
Didn't you like this? His main henchman was Mr. Frosty.
That was a good one. Yeah, see what they did there. But yeah, just it suffers. When movies start to cannibalize themselves and become caricatures themselves. Do you need 3 heroes and 3 villains in this one? I don't.
Yeah.
No, it just got too big. It just it fatted out of its pants, Mike, and that's why I didn't like it. So yeah, revelation there. We didn't like it, but we did point some things they could have done to change.
Yeah. Like I said, I just think they tried to go, like you said, the too many villains. They just tried to do too many boxes had to be checked for this movie. Even bringing in Batgirl, it was just like, okay, come on, you're just stuffing this. Even why the Alfred dying subplot? That was like, totally unnecessary. And the 2-hour running time was. Even that seemed a little bit long.
Why does Arnold Schwarzenegger need to share time with another villain? I mean, that's your guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
You couldn't figure that out, then you don't deserve to be doing what you're doing. But again, to make a common point, Mike, in its own place, in its own vacuum, if this movie was released this summer, it would be a big hit. I guarantee it. It followed the same pattern as other threes, like Spider-Man 3, where they had too many villains and too many things going on. I mean, it's what people accept. But okay, so this movie was big enough to kill a franchise, and we thought that was interesting because not only did it kill this particular franchise, after 4 in, there were more to come. I think Coolio, he's in this movie because he was kind of contractually obligated to be the Scarecrow in the 5th one.
Oh, wow.
And then the 6th one was going to be like a Batman Year One thing. Those movies both got tabled. I think Batman Year One was kept on the shelf, and that's what eventually became Batman Begins when Christopher Nolan got in there and kind of salvaged what was left of the franchise. But this movie killed those two for the Batman series, and like I said, killed Superman Lives as well. And it takes a special kind of toxicity to kill something that's basically printing free money. So we thought for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal, we'd explore some other Hollywood movies that have underperformed to the point where they've actually killed their own franchise, whether it's through collective hubris or overconfidence or poor lack of execution, where they kill the goose that lays the golden eggs here, Mike. So why don't we let's pick 3 this time. If you can cite some examples of movies that were so terrible that Hollywood decided, we quit. We're not going to do this anymore. So
we're done with that.
Yeah, we're done with that. Mike, you're up first.
All right. My first choice will be Grease 2, which came out in 1982 and was trying to follow up on the success of the original Grease movie, which I think came out in 78. Grease 2 is pretty much a carbon copy of Grease, with none of the main actors except for Dee Cohn. I think he plays Frenchie again, but she wasn't really a main actress.
Yeah.
And poor Sid Caesar, I think, appears again. Eve Arden, I think she's in there too. Anyway, it's almost a complete copy of the first one, but the songs are more forgettable. There's Michelle Pfeiffer, Maxwell Caulfield have little chemistry.
Catwoman?
Yeah, well, not in this one. No, this, like I said, it was just trying to ape what the original success was. It had a lower budget, and that could kind of be seen in the movie. And it was just in the end, it barely covered what it made in the movie. It had a lot of things going against it, like some of the movies that were released around it were just too good. It had like I think E.T. kind of
Yeah.
covered it up at the time.
Right. Same time. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it did so poorly that they scrapped three more sequels they were going to have after this movie that they just
Wow.
didn't do, and even like a Grease TV show that was planned to be on CBS, I believe, that was just nope, ain't doing it. This movie just killed it all, and I don't think it's till recently they had the Grease kind of reappear itself back on the
Yeah.
like I think they had it on live like a live Broadway show on NBC or something,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
other than that
Yeah.
this was a movie that killed it.
That's a good one, Mike. So I did the same kind of diligent research. I was just trying to find things that had, previously planned sequels ready to go
Mm.
that, they're already in the works. And it's a little bit difficult when you kind of dig into that Googleplex. But my first one's going to be The Mummy from 2017 with
Uh,
Tom Cruise. This was the film that was supposed to kickstart, Warner Brothers' rebirth of the Universal horror franchise, which
yes.
I was very excited about. You had all those movies we grew up with as kids, and they're going to be remade in a modern construct. And you had, I think, Jekyll and Hyde and Dracula and the Werewolf. These were all going to come down the pipe. But this movie was so clumsily made and executed. And Tom Cruise, for all his box office appeal, sometimes he becomes the focus of it. And this movie was more about it was a Tom Cruise vehicle and not really selling the canon or the genre that it was the world
Yeah.
the universe it was trying to sell. And it just never hit with audiences. And again, why you would start with The Mummy, one of the least popular ones, but I guess since Tom Cruise was attached, I guess that took care of itself. But again,
True.
just like the Mummy with Brendan Fraser did, the Mummy, they did a gender swap here, made her female, a very attractive female, and all she did was get more attractive as the movie got older. So she wasn't very menacing, very scary, and the rest of the time was just really about Tom Cruise. It was in every shot of this movie, and it just performed so poorly that Warner Brothers just shelved the entire
Oh
catalog of
yeah.
films. So that's my first one, The Mummy from 2017.
Good one.
Garbage.
Was
Oh,
the Van Helsing movie that came out before that? Was that trying to be part of a group of stuff too with the Hugh
well,
Jackman Van Helsing?
stay tuned.
Oh, okay. Sorry for yeah. Okay. Spoiler alert. My next movie is not really a franchise killer per se. It was this is a franchise killer for me personally. I was a big fan of James Bond movies. Um, yeah, but even as a kid, this was a tough movie for me to take. It was Moonraker from 1979.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, I love The Spy Who Loved Me, which came out right before this movie, but then Moonraker came out, and it was just this stupid plot about this evil tycoon guy who was hijacking a space shuttle. And so you end up with scenes out in space with some of the worst CGI. Some of this would make the Superman 2 movie blush a little bit with some of the space scenes. And then you had Jaws, who was like an original villain from back
Yeah.
in the day of this movie, of James
Mhm.
Bond lore. And he actually goes into space and finds his girlfriend. It's really cheesy.
Richard Keel.
Richard Keel, exactly.
Ega.
Yeah, I mean, some people would say like "Never Say Never Again" or
Yeah.
on Her Majesty's Secret
Secret
Service
Service, yeah.
would say that those were two that were real bad ones. This one for me, as a kid, like I said, it made such an impression as that for me as an 8-year-old to watch this movie and go, ugh. That it really made I liked For Your Eyes Only a little bit after this, but other than
Yeah.
that, I gave up on James Bond after that, and that's it's sorry to say for me, but that was it. Did it? It was a franchise killer, Justin.
Yeah, that's a good. I like the image of little 8-year-old Mike giving the raspberry to.
Oh yeah, that's amazing, right? Even that
Even
age,
then,
I was done.
snooty and judgmental. Even then, I love it. So my next one, Mike, as you kind of like led into there, you teed it up for me. Van Helsing from 2004.
Ah,
It's the Hugh Jackman vehicle, directed by Stephen Sommers, who did one of our favorites, The Mummy, which is another show we covered back. You guys can check that out as well. This one had 3 sequels lined up behind it.
oh wow.
Stephen Sommers had written this quadrilogy of things to cover the Van Helsing story. Again, going back again to the Universal horror films, you've got that whole canon, that whole universe there that's just ripe for the picking. So this was the original attempt to try to reboot all that. They actually had a TV show lined up to intercut in between the movies called Transylvania. They actually saved all the props and all the sets to sustain and film the next series, and then they made the movie. And it is comically bad. I put it on the same level as Batman and Robin. I
Yeah,
think we saw that in the theater, didn't we, Mike?
we did. I remember we were both just stupefied at how
Well, I remember we
bad
just
it was.
looked at each other like with these blank stares and like, what is happening here? What is this?
Again, it was another one of those movies that tried to combine so much humor
Yeah.
with a really dark theme of a movie. It just didn't work.
Kate Beckinsale's English accent. Isn't she
Yeah.
English?
She's
Anyway,
got. She's always English in movies.
yeah.
I assume she is.
But it was horrible. That montage of her dead at the end when her face is up in the sky. And, oh, it's just awful. I never knew. I couldn't tell you what happened in that movie other than it was just a bunch of dumb stuff. So that movie was so bad that it of course killed the original killer of Universal Horror
Oh, that's wild.
reboot as well. So that's my second one, Van Helsing from 2004.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All right, Mike. What's your final pick, and maybe throw in an honorable mention if you have any.
Oh, I got a couple honorable mentions here. Let's say Superman 4, Quest for Peace, 1987. Dog. It the everybody who was in it didn't want to do it. It was lower budget than ever. It bankrupted Canon Films, who had plans for Superman 5, and it kind of put to bed the Superman franchise, like you say, until
Can we talk about
2006.
Nuclear Man anymore and not
No,
cover the
no more
damn
new.
movie?
I didn't even bring his name up this time. I was like, you know what? I can't even do it.
I can't not say that. Sorry.
I can't be bothered.
All right. Fair enough.
The second X-Files movie, I Want to Believe, not good.
Yeah.
It ruined any chances of getting another X-Files movie
Yes.
out there.
Speed bump. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And the X-Men Dark Phoenix, which kind
That was
of,
supposed to be 3 movies. Yeah.
yeah, it was. It died on the vine. But my third pick would be Solo, the Han Solo movie from
Oh,
2018.
Yeah.
Um,
Bittersweet there. Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of didn't. It's one of the, I guess, one few Star Wars movies that didn't make money or barely made any money. It had Aiden Reich do Han Solo, and he looked like him, but he kind of didn't have the same,
Yeah.
charm or charisma of Harrison Ford. I guess having eyebrow actress Amelia Clark and pansexual Lando kind of didn't work
Yeah.
very well because it
Yes.
it was not well received. Let's put it that way. It killed probably at least 2 movies that were planned for Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that was going to be a standalone,
Yeah.
and another standalone movie for Boba Fett, which they ended up becoming TV shows. That as soon as they
Yeah.
saw the kind of the writing on the wall for Solo, they were like, let's do something different for those. And
Yeah.
I think in general, it just kind of snowballed the Star Wars franchise down a little bit, and it was not a franchise killer per se, because you still had the Rise of Skywalker and I guess
Yeah.
some other movies in the works, but it was a franchise downer.
It derailed it. It pushed it
Right,
in
yeah.
another direction where I've watched all of everything you mentioned. I watched the streaming stuff on Disney, and I watch
Yeah.
it because I'm a fan and I'm kind of loyal to it. But there's going into the dark room with 400 people and seeing it. That's the way these are. I remember them the way I want them to be seen.
Right.
Streaming them in my house on the countertop on a 15-inch laptop is not really
It's not cinematic.
it's not the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what happened. So that's the world we live in now. So that's a great pick, Mike. All right, so my final one here is we forget how big this was and what a huge bomb it was, but I'm gonna talk about John Carter from 2012.
Oh yeah,
This was
from Mars.
$250 million invested in this movie.
Gosh.
The Edgar Rice Burroughs book series, Barsoom, these are all based on Mars. And there are 10 sequels to that story, all written in the early 1900s. But, pulp science fiction novels that, a lot of that generation grew up with. There's a lot of content there. And they're trying to farm some of that. And they're actually kind of interesting stories. But Disney's thought was that if they could launch this big one, they could have at least 6 or 7 films lined up based on the source material from the original novels from Burroughs. But again, then they made the movie,
Yeah.
and it just did not hit home with any audience. They cast Taylor Kitsch, who was relatively big in TV on Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
But they really needed a star to drive this. I think it was probably miscast. The supporting characters here are not even A tier either. The special effects were a little clunky. It's a big epic scope. It's not that terrible when you watch it, in its own vacuum.
Right.
But again, nothing that would have the legs to sustain this big franchise movie. And $250 million
Oh my
10
gosh.
years ago, to not hit. That's a big one. People don't really talk about it a lot, but that's how bad it was. It was so inconsequential, you don't even remember what a flop it was. So that's even worse.
Yeah, I think that it had this long title, I remember, and they had to shorten it before they, on the second week of release, I think they shortened it so they thought, oh, people aren't going to it because they don't know what movie it is. And then they shortened the title to it to just John Carter, and I don't think it helped.
Yeah, not at all. They kind of picked the wrong thing there. So a couple honorable mentions are just movies that we already kind of covered, but I think it's always fun to talk about them. Battlefield Earth, of course, was that was designed to be several movies based on the scale and scope of the novel. That didn't work. Planet of the Apes, the Tim Burton 2001 reimagining.
Oh
Mike.
yeah, it's that cliffhanger, man. You don't know what's going to happen. He's at the
I
Lincoln
was
Memorial. What's going to?
dying to know what happened to
Never
Marky
know.
Mark there. But that was originally supposed to be at least two, most likely three movies. But that one was just so reviled by mostly its own players, its own cast hated it so much.
There's a lot of superhero movies we could probably group in here, like Morbius and stuff like just movies that just they haven't taken off like they.
No, they've become like the grunge bands in 2000. They thought they had something good, but they just the copy of the copy of the copy now. It's just not hitting with anybody.
They're not even a one-hit wonder. You're only one single wonder or something like that.
Speaking of one hits, I think we've been hit enough on this one, Mike. I'm about out of gas. So you should probably think about wrapping up our first show of season 4, guys.
Yay.
If you like what you heard, guys, if you're first time listening, you can check out more about our show on our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. You can send us an email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. We have a fledgling YouTube channel out now. I'm still working out the kinks on that. I'm getting some copyright violations that I'm trying to figure out how to work around. But I think I've got all those squared away now, except for Spirited Away. You're not going to be able to see Spirited Away on our somebody felt that was copyright infringement. All we did was talk about it.
Oh my gosh.
But the audio versions of the podcast will be up on those in the coming weeks, and then me and Mike are making some special companion pieces that have full audio and video annotations, some like mega episodes, companion pieces to our audio podcast. Little movies that me and Mike talking us through these wonderful movies, so we'll get to get those really soon to check that out. So Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up for our first show. Anything else you want to say to the audience before we head out of here today?
We're going to need a bigger cave, Justin.
Always memorize your pipes, Mike. It's very important. All right, gang, that's going to wrap it up. So for Mike Jane, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
That's my exit cue.